Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com. We are back from Indy. We are live, and we are ready to go. Yeah, it's only the beginning of a new week, but oh my goodness, what a week we just went through. Dottino and Matt Citak back from Indianapolis in the Combine. John Schmelk's back as well. He'll be joining the program tomorrow. So much happened in Indianapolis. I almost don't even know where to begin, but we're going to take your phone calls. I want to make this a caller-centric show. Now, why? Well, last week we were in Indy, and we had a plethora of guests. We tried to bring you boatloads of information as to what was going on, not just with the Giants, but around the league, with the picks, with free agency, etc. So we know you folks probably have a lot to say, and you didn't get a chance to call us last week. So I want to take as many calls as I can today. We'll try to keep them short and get in as many people as possible. I'm sure you've got stuff bottled up from watching all the news headlines that came out of Indianapolis. So this will be your chance to do that as we go through the course of the week starting tomorrow. And I know John's going to want to talk about some of the prospects and some of the times and the weights and everything else that we found out there. That'll be more for tomorrow. We'll get more into prospects tomorrow, okay? But today, I think I need to hear from you guys. Let's hear what you thought about all the events and the going on in Indianapolis this past week. 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. We'll be here for the next hour. Now, let's get the elephant out of the room first, okay? The Giants were reportedly one of the two teams with the Raiders involved in trying to swing a deal for Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford. Just as we were going off the air the other day, Matt, I think you were already gone.
Yeah, I was in the air when everything actually broke on Friday. Great.
So we were just about to sign off on Friday's show, and suddenly John's phone blinks with something. And we were just about to sign off. We had just had a guest who would discuss some more of the draft prospects. John sends it to commercial so he could check the alert on the phone. He looks at it and he goes, "Oh, this is big." We're in commercial. And he says to me, "Well, look at this." And it's Adam Schefter, breaking news. The Rams have decided to find terms or reach terms on a renegotiated deal with quarterback Matthew Stafford. He is staying with the Rams under a new contract. So we finish up the commercial and we come back, and of course we close the show with the blockbuster of all, that Matthew Stafford is not going to be sent anywhere. He is staying with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, you were out there during the week, as was I and John, and there was so much talk. In fact, to be frank with you, on Tuesday, when General Manager Joe Schoen came out and said flat out, the Giants are going to get themselves a veteran quarterback who's going to help them win the most games they can in 2025, from that moment forward, there was a very strong groundswell around Indianapolis where people were seriously connecting Stafford to the Giants. I mean, that's a lot of the momentum that was created by the buzz in Indy. Again, the Giants never said a word about any of this. Joe Schoen himself said, any questions about Matthew Stafford? Well, talk to the Rams. I'm not talking about him. And he can't, legally.
Yep.
But the groundswell in Indianapolis was that the Giants were going to be the team. By Thursday, there seemed to be people in Las Vegas and in Los Angeles who thought that the pendulum had somewhat shifted potentially to the Raiders being the team. And then on Friday, it turned out the Rams were the team all along. Done, period, exclamation point. He's not going anywhere. So that was the big story that came out of Indianapolis. Now, what happened immediately following that story coming out? Within minutes, and what a coincidence, within minutes, another national reporter chimes out that the Giants have switched gears And they're thinking about Aaron Rodgers. So says, I believe, Diana Rossini from The Athletic. She was the first one, I believe, to throw that out there. And, of course, the funniest part about all of this is that we know the Giants are after a veteran quarterback with an established resume for winning games because Joe Schoen told everybody that. We also know that there's a list of approximately 40 free agent quarterbacks who are about to have their contracts run out in the next week. We know that too. They're going to do due diligence on every one of those quarterbacks who they believe can help them win as many games as possible this year. That makes perfect sense. So Aaron Rodgers has a resume. He's won a bunch of games. And he's going to be a free agent. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that they're probably going to do some research on him, if only because they have to do due diligence, and he is one of the guys who's going to be available. That's not a stretch. Agreed?
Yeah, not a stretch in the slightest bit. I mean, I know you mentioned there are, 44 quarterbacks?
There was 40 after Andy Dalton re-signed in Carolina.
Yeah.
That put the list at 40.
So there are 40 quarterbacks, but obviously, Joe made it very clear that they're looking to add a veteran that most likely will be starting week 1 at the very least.
Well, only about a dozen of those guys have actually gone to the playoffs as starting quarterbacks. So that kind of narrows the list.
I was going to say, just the fact that they're looking for a starting caliber quarterback eliminates a lot of those 44 or 40 plus guys. So, yeah, at the end of the day, you're realistically talking about a handful of guys, which, of course, Aaron Rodgers is a part of that group. I mean, the Giants, as you just said, had serious interest in a 37-year-old Matthew Stafford. I don't know why anyone would think, the 40 or however old he is now, 40, 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, why they wouldn't, at least discuss that possibility. I mean, Joe said they're going to look under every single possible rock to find a quarterback. If you can get, Aaron Rodgers on a pretty cheap deal, maybe incentive heavy, why not? So I understand at least the investigating that possibility.
You have to investigate every one.
Yes,
100%. of the established winning quarterbacks who are going to be free. Rodgers is simply one of the guys on that pending list.
Yes.
That's it. So that was really like, okay, do you want to tell me that the sun rises in the east? It does. Aaron Rodgers is on that list of about a dozen guys who are going to be free, who has started an NFL playoff game. Nothing wrong with that. I'm sure that they're doing their due diligence going up and down that list, and they are going to at least talk about, consider, and do some research on every single one of those guys. Period. End of story for the time being, until they narrow the list down. And once they narrow the list down and then started to prioritize that list, that's when this will become a story. But right now, they've got to sort through it.
For sure. There's still a lot to go through. I mean, the negotiating period starts almost exactly 1 week from this exact moment. 12 o'clock noon on Monday, March 10th is when teams can start negotiating with free agents. So this whole week, there's obviously been a lot of work already done, but this week I would assume that that's going to be probably the primary focus, figuring out which of these veteran quarterbacks they're going to go ahead and target as soon as they can next week. If you want to believe a lot of the reports out there, and I'm talking about reports that have come out since the Stafford news dropped, so in the last couple of days, again, we're not privy to this information, but it seems like the interest is genuine to some degree. Again, to what level, who knows? It could just be them, exploring the possibility of adding a future Hall of Fame quarterback on a 1-year deal. Like, again, you got to explore every option. But based on the reports that have come out, especially in the last, I would say, 24 to 48 hours, it does seem like that interest is, it is genuine. We'll see over the next week to what degree
You
that
can
interest
read into
is.
that whatever you will.
Look, I've come to learn you can't, obviously you can't not believe every report out there, because
some reports you got to take with a whole barrel of salt.
you could almost find a report basically saying that the Giants are going to go after every single quarterback that's available this offseason.
There's even a couple of guys today reporting that the Giants have trades in place with the Titans for the #1 pick.
Exactly. So,
I mean, this is as a front office guy once said to me many years ago, this is the one time of the year where a front office person can be excused for even lying to their mothers, because that's the time frame that we're in right now.
Oh, for sure. The one thing I will say just about that report or reports, and it was interesting this morning, Ian Rappaport put out a report saying that basically over the next week, the Titans are bringing in Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Abdul Carter, and Travis Hunter to their facility for the top 30 visits. And the reason I think that is a little noteworthy is because prospect visits, I believe this week is when they're allowed to technically start. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they are bringing in especially those top 2 quarterbacks ASAP, I take that as seeing that the Titans kind of want to see whether or not they want to stay at 1 and take one of those 2 guys. Mm-hmm. And if they decide, in the next week, 2 weeks, oh wait, we'd rather have Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, then I think you're going to see a potential trade. I'm not even saying necessarily with the Giants. Someone would likely trade up to #1 in that situation. So I just thought it was a little interesting that they're bringing those visits in as soon as they're like legally allowed to, because it seems like they want to get a read on the quarterbacks and whether or not they're going to have interest. And if not, then their attention is going to shift towards Carter and Hunter, in which case, if the Giants do have interest in moving up to #1, that would put the Giants in a pretty good position, because the Giants are the only team that could offer the Titans the ability to still get one of those 2 guys, unless the Browns move up from #2, which I guess is also technically possible.
The one thing that was pretty unanimous out of Indy is that Cleveland is going to take a quarterback.
Yeah.
That seemed pretty unanimous.
Which is why
everybody you talk to.
Which is why if you're the Giants and you fall in love with one of the quarterbacks and you have one quarterback, a decent amount above the other, you got to go to 1 to make sure you get your guy in that case.
Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Once again, you could always catch a replay of this show on the archive as part of your favorite podcast platforms everywhere and at Giants.com/podcasts, as well as the Giants mobile app. 201-939-4513. Let's go to the phones, because I know you folks want to chime in, and we've already spent enough time kind of previewing or reviewing what happened last week. We go to Jeff in Maine. You're first on the program. Hello.
Oh, hey, afternoon, gentlemen.
Hi.
Great show. It's turning into a really interesting off season, and great interviews last week. Really enjoyed them. So I have a question about a trade. This month, of course, we'll sign a free agent quarterback, and next month you got the draft. But I'm thinking, if we additionally considered trading, and would you be in favor of that for a, say, third quarterback? Throw another dart at the board that might have a little more upside than Tommy DeVito. And in particular, would you consider trading, and what would you give for either Joe Milton, Tanner McGee, or Jake Browning?
Wait a second. Jeff, let me get this straight. Okay. The Giants are trying to get their #1 priority solved, which is a starting quarterback. And you're more concerned about trying to make a deal to get their third-string quarterback. Did I understand that question correctly?
Well, not so much third string, just to have – I figure that if they go into the draft with 2 quarterbacks already signed, say a veteran – I'm hoping a cheap veteran, but anybody – and also, say, someone who's got some developmental potential, like, say, a Joe Milton, wouldn't that put them in a stronger position to go with the best player available in the draft instead of having to draft a quarterback in the first round?
Oh, they don't have to draft a quarterback in the first round. This is some kind of fallacy that some people keep throwing out there. They don't have to do anything. What they've got to do is draft the guy who they're all in on and believe is the best player for this franchise. And if that player does not happen to be a quarterback, then it's not a quarterback. The position is not relevant in the draft. What is relevant is that they get a starting quarterback for this season. Now, based on what Joe Shane said, you can bet that the veteran that they acquire probably next week, as Matt's already alluded to, March 10th is the day where the legalized conversations can begin with the free agents. Beginning on the 10th, they're going to go after a veteran QB. That guy is not going to be a dirt cheap veteran QB. It's going to be somebody who's got some type of quality resume on his desk. They're not going to bring in a Joe Milton or one of the other fellows you talked about as the, quote, veteran QB. That's not happening.
No, I just meant that as another dart to throw at the QB situation, depending on who they, sign and stuff.
I think it's pretty clear they're going to draft one. They're going to get somebody next week, okay? Whoever that is. It's going to be a Tier 1 name or a Tier 2 guy, okay? I'll still promote Jimmy Garoppolo as my favorite on the Tier 2. But if they can still shop on Tier 1 and they find somebody there that they want, they're going to get him. And then, in all likelihood, they will take a QB at some point during the draft later on. Now, there's also a chance, I wouldn't put it past them, Jackson Dart had a real nice combine, and it appears he's now separated himself in the group 2 of people in this quarterbacks class. You may not be able to get him with the first pick in the second round. If you really like Jackson Dart and you're the Giants, it sounds like you may have to trade up a few spots into the bottom of the first round to go get him. I would not put that past the Giants once they sign their vet to go get a Jackson Dart. Otherwise, you just assume wait till the second day.
Well, yeah, look, the only thing we know, the only thing we know for sure right now is that next week, the Giants are going to add a quarterback, and at some point during the draft, the Giants will add another quarterback.
Very likely.
We don't know if it's going to be at 3 overall, if they trade up, if it's going to be at the end of the first, second, day 3. We don't know.
Right.
But we know they are going to add a veteran free agent and a rookie in the draft. Now, the guys that you mentioned, Jeff, as like the potential throw a dart at the board at another option. The way I look at it is like, and I know Joe Milton has all this hype because of that one game he started at the end of the season. He didn't even start. He came in for Drake May at the end of the season, and he had a good game. But I'm not trading draft capital for a guy that was a 6th-round pick that literally had, 3/4 of a good game. I don't want to give up, an early day 3 pick, which is my guess is what it would cost to get Joe Milton in a trade, because I kind of look at Tommy DeVito as that level of like developmental quarterback. I mean, there's a reason why Tommy DeVito is being brought back for his 3rd season with the Giants. He's won a handful of games for the Giants over the last 2 years with, obviously not the most talented roster around him. So if you're going to if you're going to try to develop a guy for maybe potentially down the road, I think they're going to stick with Tommy DeVito in that sort of role rather than trading draft capital to bring in another guy that, maybe would be considered a little bit of an upgrade from Tommy DeVito, but still not the guy that they probably don't think of as like the future franchise quarterback.
It doesn't pay, Jeff. You're talking about somebody who was just a tad higher than QB3 if you're acquiring one of the guys you named. It makes no sense.
Okay, so what if the vet, though, gets injured and the draft pick isn't ready to go in? Wouldn't someone like Jake Browning or Tanner McGee maybe be a
Brian
better...
Daboll's going to tell you that he's had Tommy DeVito for 2 years. He knows the system. He knows the playbook, and he's already won games with him. So why would one of the guys you're talking about be ahead of Tommy DeVito? There's no reason for that.
I was just wondering if you thought maybe they had more upside, or if they'd be worth, like, say, a 5th-round pick or something.
No, I would not make any deals for any of those guys.
I guess
the
only way I would maybe consider something like that is if, I guess the only one would be Joe Milton, just because he's going into his 2nd season. The other guys you mentioned, at least Browning's been around for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. I forgot the 3rd name that you said.
Tanner McGee from Philly.
Yeah, and how long has he been in the league for now?
second year, I think.
Yeah, but what's the point?
But he really had, we haven't seen anything from him.
I mean, let's not forget, Tommy DeVito's won more games than all those guys combined.
So the only way I guess I would hypothetically consider this route is if you could get away maybe with, something like a 5th-round pick to the Patriots for Joe Milton, and then not take a rookie quarterback in the draft. Have that sort of be your quote-unquote, rookie draft pick. Obviously, even though it's second year.
You're saying
that's the only way I would consider that. I would still rather, if the Giants are going to draft or get a young guy on a rookie deal, I would still rather them draft a rookie this year. Again, I don't even care what round, whether it's first, second, third. There are some guys that are supposed to go on day 2 that I would have a lot of interest in if I'm the Giants. Not necessarily the top guys. I would love Cam Ward, but we don't know.
Thank you, Jeff.
We don't know if
we don't know
if the Giants are going to be in a position to be able to draft Cam Ward. So, yeah, the only way I would consider that route is if you're basically going to treat that trade for Joe Milton as your rookie that you're getting on a rookie contract.
To make this very clear to you folks, from being at the Combine, and one of our experts, and we had a whole bunch of them on during the shows, and they're all there on the Giants archive, by the way. If you get a chance, the Big Blue Kickoff live shows are all up there on Giants.com and your mobile app and all your podcast platforms, as well as the Giants Huddles, which we also did a slew of those, which were even more interviews from all the people out there who knew the comings and goings of what was going on at the Combine. Now, one thing that was very clear to me, and I think I only discussed this with one of our draft experts, this is a draft of backup quarterbacks. Truthfully, that's what it is. I think you were already gone at the time when I had this conversation with one of our draft gurus. Cam Ward, universally, over the course of the last 2 weeks, has pulled ahead of Sanders on practically everybody's board and is reportedly the best quarterback in this draft, but not on anybody's board grade-wise. I'm not talking about desperation need-wise. I'm talking grade-wise. I couldn't find anybody in Indianapolis that said to me he's a top 10 player in this draft. I could not find anybody. And I asked a whole slew of people. So if you take him that high, you're taking him because of the need. You're not taking him because of his grade. His grade is not that high. There seemed to be quite a separation to Shedeur Sanders as the second quarterback, according to most people at Indy. Although you could find a few handfuls here and there who would prefer him because of his style or because of, he had such a great completion percentage. And they're like, well, Ward takes too many risks. I'd rather have the guy who, throws the easy, safe ball, the short pass, and is going to move the chains. So you'll find a few people who would still think that Sanders is pretty close to Ward, and they might rather have him because of style, because of flavor, if you will. But it was very, very difficult to find anybody who thought Sanders' grade was even in the top 15. A lot of people said to me, he's probably in the 20s somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think the week in Indianapolis certainly did do is created some separation between the two quarterbacks.
And it was clear.
It was already starting to kind of lean that way, more in Cameron Ward's favor. But this weekend, Indy seemed to really solidify that, I guess different teams are going to have different ranges of separation between the two, but undoubtedly there is separation between those two guys.
Yeah.
Cam Ward is at the top, and I don't know how far you want to separate him, but Shedeur is clearly number 2 now.
And then Jackson Dart did real well with his interviews, with his podium session, and then throwing the ball as well over the weekend.
He came off very impressive during the media session.
He really did.
We were all standing right there.
He really did.
He came off really well.
And so there was a strong feeling in Indy that he has moved into that third spot ahead of Jason Milroe and anybody else that you might want to throw into that next cluster.
Quinn Ewers.
It seems as though he kind of moved up and he's kind of on the next shelf, and then you got to go another step down to the rest of the grouping.
To the Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers.
The rest of them.
Maybe Will Howard.
Will Howard had a tough throwing.
He had a rough
tough
day.
throwing day at the Combine. That did not go so well for him, and I felt bad for him.
Yeah.
Now, the one quarterback who's moved up a lot, Tyler Schauk.
Yeah.
From Louisville.
Yep.
The Louisville QB, it's hard not to be impressed with his frame, his stature, his personality, his demeanor. He's a little older. That's one knock that's going to be on him. He has had 2 significant injuries, a broken collarbone and a broken fibula. He's overcome those. And, of course, his full resume of production is not quite as high as some of the other guys as well.
Yeah.
Those things are all true. But the more you talk to people in Indianapolis, the more that they said to you, his traits should probably move him up a lot higher on boards than he was coming into Indy.
Yeah, and he even said that he's spoken to a lot of teams and that the age concern is not really that big of a concern when it comes to the teams. Mm-hmm. The media, in the public's eyes, the fact that he's already 25 raises a bit of a red flag. But he said, that I've spoken to a bunch of teams and not one has expressed my age as any sort of issue or a red flag or anything like that.
So that's just a quick review of the quarterback situation because we got a call about it. We put that in there, but it's my fault. I know I said I wanted to get to calls quickly. Let's see what we can do over the last half hour and try to make some rapid-fire calls, the rule of the day. Line 2, Jason in New Haven. You're next on the program. Hello.
Hey, what's up, fellas?
Hi.
How you doing?
Hey, I just want to say you guys did a great job last week. I loved a lot of the interviews you guys did, especially with Miller. I think his last name was Miller?
Jim Miller, former quarterback, who's with Sirius NFL XM NFL Radio. Yep. He's awesome.
Yeah, he was probably my best interview, and I always love the Cassell. Cassell always does an awesome job with you guys every year.
NFL Films.
Yep. So a few things. Okay. So at 3, I'm good with any one of these 4. And I've said it before, either Sanders or Ward or Carter or Hunter. Me personally, I'm good with either staying. If there's a QB the Giants like, because at the end of the day, I respect everybody's opinions, everybody's jobs, and what they do for a living. Because I'm not a scout at the end of the day. But like I've called numerous times, scouts to me or these draft gurus, quote unquote, I take them, like you said, Paul, with a big grain of salt, because the only people that really matters decision is Shane and the scouts and Dave. Yeah. Those are the only guys I'm interested in hearing from. And of course, we're not going to hear from them because they're not going to divulge what they think.
We don't even get to hear from them.
Right. So if Sanders is a guy they want, get him. If it's Cam,
that's it.
Get him. If it's Hunter or Carter, take him. I don't get it. A few things, and I'll try to make them quick. I personally love the interviews with Cam Ward and Shador. To me, in my opinion, they both seemed very confident. Sanders talking about transforming programs, to me, struck me personally, my ears. And I know his father had a lot to do with that, too, as the head coach. But he was one of the reasons Colorado was a better team the last 2 years. I mean, there's definitely no doubt about that. Anybody that's disputing that, to me, just has a personal vendetta against him. That's just my opinion. So I like that he mentioned that. He came across very confident. And those are the kind of guys, in my opinion. Now, I know the Eli archetype, Eli was very quiet, very reserved, and we love that about Eli. But then there's nothing wrong with having an uber-confident guy, as long as the person can back it up. So I love those 2 guys, how they spoke on the podium. I was very impressed by those 2. And like I said, I know, I don't know if you guys felt it. I know you 2 probably not the biggest fans of Shador for your own personal reason. That's fine. But to me, if he's there 3 and the Giants take him, I would have no problems with it. And if for some reason it just feels like, I don't want to say people are negatively talking about him, but it just seems, in my opinion, that he's just like a lot of the draft gurus and media are just very don't know what the words I want to use. I don't want to say negative or they have a vendetta because, I don't want to misuse or misrepresent people's feelings about him. But it just seems like it's a lot of what he doesn't have or what he doesn't do or the arm he doesn't have. And that, to me, is just not the right way to look because, like I've said before, people were saying that Trevor Lawrence was generational and Zach Wilson was generational. So nobody, like I said, and Paul, you've heard me and Matt, nobody really knows what these guys are going to be. Nobody has a crystal ball to see how these guys are going to turn out. If he fits your offense and he has the leadership qualities and can make the throws as a quarterback, that's what I'm more interested in.
All right, Jason, let me just ask you one thing before we let you go, because I do want to make these quicker. Don't you think it's a little unfair for Sanders to take all the credit for those teams, rising when Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, was on his team and played every snap on both sides of the ball?
You're right, Paul. It wasn't just Shador. It wasn't just Shador.
Shador's assumption that, look what I did to transform this team. Well, wait a minute, okay? Your teammate who played both sides of the ball while you were only on one side of the ball won the Heisman Trophy. And is probably a higher graded player than Shador is, but then he has the let's just say the guts to go say something like that on the podium. I'm sorry, that just didn't sit well with me.
Right, and I get it. Like I said, we all have our different opinions, and Paul, you're not wrong or right. It's just a difference of opinion.
Sure.
And it wasn't just him. It was his father. It was Travis Hunter. They had some, they had other players that stepped up well. But he is, if we're going to he was the main. He's one of the. I'll say this. He was one of the main reasons why Colorado turned their program around. Because people forget what Colorado was for these last 15, 20 years. They've been absolutely.
Jason, there's no doubt. He was part of it. He was part of it.
100%.
And that's the reason he's being thought. And that's the reason he's being thought of as a first-round pick.
Okay.
I got to go, Jason.
Point.
I got to go.
Okay.
Take care. 201-939-4513. Brandon in New Jersey, you're next on the show. Hello.
Hey, how's it going, fellas? I just got a quick question because I just don't. You said something, it just doesn't make any logical sense to me. You said that you just reported that people from Indy have now come to the conclusion that there's a gap of separation between Cam and Shador. You just reported that. But last time I checked, neither one of them did anything but interview and do height and weight.
Yep.
And their height and weights are almost identical. So
Brandon, I'm glad you asked the question.
Like, how could no games were played, no balls were thrown?
I'm glad you asked the question, because what happens at the Combine when guys say they're not going to do drills and they're not going to throw? They do team interviews, which are also a big part of every player's personality profile and folder. Cam Ward apparently won handedly when it came down to the interview process, according to many of the people in Indianapolis. Because I asked the same thing. I said to a bunch of people, why is it in the last 2 weeks, and by the way, I prefer Cam Ward over Sanders myself, but I wondered. I'm like, wait a minute. This gap is real. You saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it. We all heard it out in Indianapolis that Ward pulled away. And I was asking people the same thing. How is it that he pulled away when they didn't play any more games? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, it made sense to the people in Indy because they both had to go there to do visits. And Cam Ward is a very impressive guy to a lot of people.
And not only that, but you're right. You're right that they did not do a single thing on the field. They didn't throw the football, didn't do any of the drills. You're 100% right on that. But the Combine is also just an opportunity for not only all of the media, but representatives, the front office, coaching staffs from all 32 teams. Everyone is all together in the same city, in the same couple of hotels. You see everyone in the NFL world. It might not be that last week, created this separation, more so that the media is just catching up to how most teams have already felt probably for months now. It's just now that everyone was together and, all these reporters had a chance to really talk to all of these different talent evaluators across the league, now it's sort of, I guess, a little more established that there is separation between the two.
Yeah, Brandon, a lot more information gets shared is really in short of what Matt's trying to say, because now we're all in a bubble, and so everybody's information gets pooled.
Can I add a follow-up?
Sure.
Were you at all getting reports that it was his board work or the actual interview? Because to me, it feels more like groupthink than it feels like actual evaluation if nobody touched a football. That sounds like groupthink to me.
Well,
I'll take your offense.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Board work, see, what we understand and what we saw in the Hard Knocks video is that when the Giants have their interview process, they do have a video screen in their room, and in all likelihood a board in their room where they could draw up plays. I mean, we heard players tell us that when they come to interview with the Giants at the Combine, they're asked to look at plays and they're asked to do recall on plays and diagrams. That's part of the interview process, if you will. I can't tell you if that's some of the stuff that created some of the comments that were going around the Combine. I can't tell you that. I can only tell you that in general, our information, and again, it could have also been a delayed reaction that we just caught up to the teams, that Ward is clearly ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, we do not get to sit into the interview rooms, as you guys know.
No, sir.
We have no idea what either quarterback was actually like in those rooms. All we can go by is what people are reporting, what we heard from various different reporters from all over the place. It's not like this was just
let's
one
just say
person.
There's a lot of chatter in Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's not like this was one person trying to drive a personal agenda. Like, this was being widely reported from a whole range of different people from all over the place.
We're just trying to give you a pass along. We're like the messengers. We're passing along to you guys the flavor of what we got in Indy. We're not telling you ourselves that we were in the rooms and that we are now moving the board. That's not what's happening here. We're telling you that the feel in Indy was pretty strong. Ward has moved in front.
Yeah, and I really do think this was just a kind of an opportunity for the media to get caught up with how teams have felt probably since the end of the college football season. Like, you're right, Brandon, that no one stepped onto the field between those two quarterbacks and did any drills. So in that sense, I can understand your question of how could this separation have been caused while in Indianapolis. As we see, sometimes the media is a little late to catch up to how NFL teams are actually feeling, and I think that was the case in this situation.
Now, to be fair, you said before you preferred Ward over Sanders.
For sure.
I've said the same thing. So has John. And I think Lance Meadows also said the same thing. If you watched any of the games between the players, well, not against each other, but any of their games, Colorado games or Miami games, Ward has a more complete, more dynamic skill set.
Yeah,
that's not exactly a surprise.
I think that Shedeur Sanders has the potential to be a good to very good quarterback in the NFL. I think he has the potential. I'm not saying he will, but he has the potential. Cam Ward, his ceiling is just higher, in my personal opinion. The way he plays the game, the way he plays the quarterback position, I think he has a potential higher ceiling than Shedeur Sanders. That does not mean that Shedeur Sanders won't or can't be a good NFL quarterback. He could end up being a great quarterback. He could end up being better than Cam Ward. But when you go into the draft, sometimes a lot of it comes down to, traits and certain specific skills that teams value more than other skills. Like, Cam Ward is not as accurate of a passer as Shedeur Sanders. No one's going to argue that. Shedeur is the most accurate passer in this draft. Mm-hmm. But a team might value having more athleticism at the position than just being purely, very accurate. So,
when you put your checklist out and you look at a player and say, okay, now, how many boxes does he check? Well, that's one thing, right? You see maybe he checks 10 out of 12 boxes that you're looking for. But then the other thing you've got to do now, when you compare him to player B, maybe the other guy's got almost the same amount of boxes, or maybe exactly the same amount of boxes. But then you have to say, all right, now how am I weighing each one of those boxes? And how you weigh them and distribute the importance of those boxes also affects the overall grade of what you're going to give the guy. So we go back to the phones. Elijah in Ohio. You're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey, I hope you guys are doing well. I had two quick questions. One of them was the cornerback situation and what you guys thought of the top free agents. And I just found out from NFL something that Darius Slay from the Eagles just got released.
Yep.
And wondered what your opinion was on that and how close of a matchup is Shedeur Sanders versus Jackson Dart. Are they far at least separated for the number 2 spot versus 3, or are they pretty close?
All right, we'll take your call off the air. Please stay listening to us, and we'll take care of you. Thank you for calling.
I'll start with the first one, the cornerbacks, because I've spoken about it on the show. I very much like and I'm in favor of the Giants adding one of the top veteran cornerbacks in free agency. One of the DJ Reed, Travarius Ward, a guy like that. I think that would just be a big boost to a very young DB room and especially young corner room. Bringing in a guy like that could, take a little pressure off of Deonte Banks, could also help further his development and help him grow as a corner. So I'm very much in favor of that. I've been steadfast about that for the last however long, month or so. In terms of Darius Slay,
34 years old.
Yeah, his age at that position, you still sometimes see corners at that age perform at a top level. Like Stephen Gilmore has been able to, still perform at a pretty high level despite him getting high up in age. But when you get up to that age, the mid-30s, at that position, you could sometimes fall off a cliff kind of quickly. And so I would much rather go after one of the top veteran free agents that is, Ward and DJ Reed are both 28 years old, which is still a couple years into their career, but it's better, in my opinion, than adding a 34-year-old that's been around the league for over a decade now and is coming off a season where he was solid. He wasn't bad by any means, but he also wasn't like a number 1 shutdown corner.
Ian Rappaport wasn't so sure that the Jets won't tag DJ Reed when we talked to him in Indy.
I feel like he was surprised because they're going to have to pay Sauce Gardner very soon.
He was kind of iffy on that one when I brought him up.
I would be a little surprised if they tagged DJ Reed.
Now, Odighi Zua, the defensive tackle from the Cowboys, did you see the item on him?
I did, yeah. He could get the tag.
All of a sudden now the Cowboys are saying, if they can't reach a deal with him, they may just throw the tag on him. And this is all surprising because we were under the impression out at Indy that this was going to be a very, very small group, if at all a group, of guys getting tagged outside of Higgins.
Well, so far it's been Higgins and Trey Smith. That's only 2 for sure, right? Yeah.
That's it. But now maybe some teams are getting a little jittery.
Yeah. Look, I'd be surprised if DJ Reed ends up getting tagged because, unless they're just tagging him to then trade him.
Could be tag and trade.
I guess then it's possible. But, again, then you also run the Jets right now don't have a ton of cap space to work with. And when you tag him, until that trade is agreed upon and official, that's whatever the tag number is for corners, $20 million. That's a $20 million lock into the Jets cap space. So if you don't have a ton of cap space to work with in the first place, then that kind of prevents you from making some moves in free agency. And obviously the Jets have a lot of moves to make in free agency. So I'd be surprised. And again, that would be a player that I would be at the very least strongly considering for the Giants come next week. Him and Travarius Ward, I would take either one of them.
17.5 is the transition, by the way. If they didn't franchise, the transition 17.5.
And the franchise is just over 20.
Yeah. Just in case they want to use the other tag.
Yeah. Now the interesting thing about attacking the top of the cornerback market is, depending on how obviously the first round of the draft goes, the Giants could be looking at taking Travis Hunter at number 3. And if you take him at number 3, presumably, I would think the buzz seems to be leaning towards, him playing corner with maybe a package of plays at wide receiver. Right. I guess it varies from team to team, but the general consensus seems to be that would be the best route.
The majority of people in Indy seem to feel that way.
Yeah, so
and we have always felt that way too.
100%. It's easier to play full-time corner with a package of plays at receiver,
no doubt,
than full-time receiver and a package of plays at corner. So if it's, the thing is, free agency starts in a week, and the Giants probably won't know in a week, who they're going to end up in the draft, because unless within the next 7 days the Giants and the Titans agree to a trade, then there's no way to know for sure if they'll even be able to move up, if they'll be interested in moving up, if they're staying at 3, who will be on the board. So it's a little bit of a risk, because if you take Travis Hunter, then that could be your number 1 corner right there.
Correct.
And then, someone like DJ Reed or Travarius Ward, not quite as
That's why I don't
necessary.
see them going hog wild crazy and opening up the bank vault for a cornerback in free agency. I don't see it.
I think it kind of depends on, again, the Giants, the front office won't even know for sure, but where they think the direction they're going in the draft, if they get a sense of, there's a decent chance we're going to be able to move up to 1 and take the quarterback we want, then I could see them going aggressively after one of these top corners in free agency. If, the prospect visits the Titans have this week with Cam Ward and Shedeur, if reports come out that they go great and that all of a sudden the Titans think they want to stay at 1, then all of a sudden your attention probably shifts a little more towards Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter at number 3, in which case then, maybe you don't need to take a high-priced corner in free agency.
All right. Part B to the question was Sanders or Dart. Well, you figure number 3, neither guy is really valued as the 3rd best player in this draft. I mean, that's obviously very fair. I don't think anybody in their right mind would tell you that those players' grades would be as high as the 3rd player in this draft. I certainly didn't find anybody who believed that. Most people seem to believe that Sanders would be somewhere in the 20s if you had to put a grade on him. And most people seem to think that if you had to put a number grade on Dart, he'd be somewhere between 30-ish to 40-ish. At least that's the impression I got. Did you get the same?
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you're the Giants and you're picking the first pick in the 2nd round of the draft, well, chances are that's probably a better sweet spot for Dart, because someone is more likely to draft Sanders before you pick. Sanders is probably going to go somewhere, if not high in the 1st round, because somebody overdrafts him. He'll probably go somewhere in the middle of the 1st round. I don't think he's going to go after Dart.
He's not
going to happen.
Shedeur is not dropping to, early 2nd round or the very bottom of the 1st round. That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Still likely to go, I would say most likely somewhere in the first half of the 1st round.
So with that in mind, realistically, if you're the Giants, you might get a shot at Dart if you stay pat at the beginning of the 2nd round. You just might. Or if you have to go up 3 or 4 spots and you want that 5th-year option, you could go to the bottom of the 1st round, and Dart should still be there, because Sanders, in all likelihood, unless there's a big surprise, I still think he'll be the 2nd quarterback taken.
Yeah, Sanders, I agreed. Again, a lot can change in the next month and a half, but it's sure looking like Shedeur will be the 2nd quarterback taken, and rightfully so. I think he deserves to be the 2nd quarterback taken. If the Giants, pass at quarterback at 3 and then decide, Jackson Dart is the guy that we want, then I think there is a lot of value into trading back into the end of the 1st round.
I could see that
instead
happening.
of risking having another team trade up in front of you to take Dart. Go up, move up a couple of picks. It's not going to cost you that much,
Probably not.
Especially with it looking like the Giants are going to get, a pretty high compensatory pick, likely, at the end of the 4th round. It gives you another 4th round pick to potentially use in a move up. In this case, go get your guy at the end of the 1st. If you want Dart, go get him at the end of the 1st. Get the 5th-year option, and don't risk someone moving up to get him, because we've seen how many times over the last handful of years, Giants are targeting this guy, and all of a sudden someone trades up right in front of the Giants and snags him.
Tell me about it. You know how many guys I've lost in the last 20 years? But the thing about Dart is that we understand he interviewed well. he certainly interviewed well at the podium, was very impressive at the podium, and had a really good workout, too. Yeah. So, anybody out there in the National Football League who had a solid grade on Dart coming in, he did not hurt himself. That's for sure.
He definitely helped himself. But don't take us complimenting him as saying that he's, jumped above Shedeur. I'd be surprised.
We just said he's probably in the sweet spot.
I have
for the
seen
Giants.
some reports saying like, some teams now have Dart number 2 above Shedeur. Personally, I don't see it and agree with that. I think Shedeur is still clearly number 2. But Dart definitely helped himself and boosted his draft stock.
Cliff in New York, you're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey, guys. Listen, with Rodgers and Stafford, is it possible that Joe Shane was just kind of getting a feel for what a quarterback is going to cost this year?
Joe made it clear, though, on Tuesday what his plan was. He wasn't holding his cards close to his vest. He told you he was going to go get himself a quality veteran who's got a lot of wins on his belt.
Yeah, and all the reports over the last week about Stafford in particular, like, there was genuine interest there. And some of the numbers that were being thrown around, again, these are all reports, so we don't know how accurate they are, but they were obviously significant amount of money that both the Giants, Raiders, several teams were willing to give Stafford on a new deal to come be their quarterback. So I don't think it was simply just trying to get a sense of the market. I think that interest was real, and if Stafford, and the Rams couldn't agree to terms, then there would have been a decent chance that a trade could have happened.
Look at it this way, Cliff. As far as Stafford, I do think there are two different animals here. I think when you listen to Joe tell you basically what he is planning to do, you can kind of put a lot of dots together and draw those lines and say, okay, Stafford was a legit possibility. As far as Aaron Rodgers is concerned, he's a pending free agent. And you have to remember something about pending free agents. First of all, you can't talk to them yet because obviously tampering rules apply. But there are agents out there for those pending free agents who are going to want to stir up as much heated interest as possible and get their clients' names out there as high as they can in the sky and in the brightest lights that they can. So it behooves them to start talking up their guys as free agency approaches. And if you can digest what I just said, I think you have a better understanding of where I believe this is coming from.
But I don't know if Rodgers necessarily fits into that category, though. With where he is in his career, like, I don't think he's out there looking this offseason for, a huge deal or to see who's going to offer him the most money. He already put a lot of money, gave the Jets back a lot of money. We saw when he renegotiated his contract, he took a pretty significant pay cut.
Money is not the only reason why agents throw guys' names out in the press. It's only one of the reasons. It's not all of them. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but there are other reasons.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the 40 quarterbacks. I guess a lot of those guys are number 3s that are only, given, short-term deals anyway. But I've always been hoping that, Joe Shane is not shy. I'm hoping he's going to knock on doors where there are people under contract. Obviously, he has to wait a little bit. But he's allowed to knock on a door and say where there's an established number 1 and a number 2 on a team, and he wants to know, is it possible that you might part with either one of those guys, and if so, what would it cost? That's where I think our guy might be.
He certainly has to explore, like Matt said, he's going to look under every rock. I mean, to be frank with you, okay, I'm going to overstep my bounds just a little bit here, but if there is a veteran quarterback on a team that has not been rumored to be on the block, and the Giants think they might be interested in him, there's nothing wrong with making a phone call to that GM and saying, hey, I haven't read his name anywhere, I haven't heard his name anywhere, but would you be interested in talking about him because we might like to have a conversation? He could absolutely do that. And maybe a name that nobody is even thinking about is part of that conversation. You could absolutely be right about that. No doubt.
Yeah, I think that's where the gold might be. But meanwhile, I'm hearing about Jackson Dart. Do you think him and Cam are the two guys that rose during the combine period or the pre-draft so far? You guys say that every year there's a quarterback that rises up.
I don't.
It's like.
I don't think.
Cam was up.
I don't think I would put Cam in that category because I feel like a lot of people already kind of considered him the top quarterback and a likely, at the very least, top 3 pick before the week in Indianapolis. Dart, on the other hand, now some people are talking about him potentially going kind of towards the end of the first round, maybe sneaking into the end of the first round, when before the week in Indianapolis, I feel like the consensus was probably, he's going to go somewhere early day 2. So he definitely helped his stock a lot. The Louisville quarterback helped his stock a lot. And honestly, Quinn Ewers helped his stock with a pretty good performance throwing the football around as well.
He had a good week. He was good at the podium. He was good in his throwing session.
But I would say that, from my opinion, Dart probably helped himself the most of these quarterbacks. Again, Cam Ward was likely already the top quarterback in most people's eyes already. So I don't know how much he helped himself, really.
Should they be concerned? I heard that the guy had small hands for a pro. We learned in the history, 100-year history, that in the 1920s the football was shaped more like a melon, and that to enhance the passing game they slimmed it down a lot. And then at the same time we learned something that I always suspected, but was that the college football nowadays is narrower than the pro. And if the guy has small hands and he goes spinning out of the pocket to escape the rush, is he going to drop it?
Yeah, Ward was at 9 inches, which is a tad on the small size. I'm not going to dispute that at all. And I think one of the things that's interesting, and I've always kind of wondered this myself, to be honest, Cliff, because I've had some questions in my own mind philosophically about what they do at the combine. And for these players who work with an NCAA ball, then now they go to the combine, and now they're being asked to use an NFL ball. And yes, there is a difference. There is an adjustment. And it's something that has to be considered. And a lot of scouts are very queasy about a guy who'll have small hands, specifically because of the slick football that they use in the NFL. And in cold weather, it does become a problem when you get sacked. Can you hold on to the ball, or is it going to be a strip sack? That does become something that guys talk about. And smaller hands are a factor. And some scouts weigh that more heavily than other scouts do. So I absolutely understand you bringing up that point. In Ward's case, I don't know how it plays because of his ability to get out and get away from pressure. He seems to avoid pressure more than getting hit. He doesn't take a ton of sacks. He doesn't hold the ball as long as Sanders does.
He's, I feel like, more of a playmaker.
Yeah.
He extends plays with his legs. And
then gets rid of it.
Yeah.
Sanders holds it longer.
Yeah, which that's another, I see that as a attribute, a positive attribute, the fact that Shedeur is not afraid to stand in the pocket, even if he knows he's about to get smacked by a defender. He will stay in the pocket to give himself an extra second to try to make a throw. That is definitely a plus for Shedeur, but Cam is able to extend plays with his legs, sort of what we see some of the top quarterbacks around the NFL do more nowadays.
Anything else, Cliff?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I still don't want Travis Hunter, man. You can't play two positions in the NFL. Coughlin preached team and preparation, and this kid is going out of his way to prepare mentally for the games extra. That's fine and well, but everybody in the NFL is going out of there that wants to be really good is already doing that to play one position.
Okay. Thanks for the call. One more call on the program. Mike from Massachusetts, you're last. We'll sneak you in, Mike.
Hey, I want you guys to compare Hunter and Carter, strengths and weaknesses and advantages for the Giants if they were available at 3 and the Giants chose to draft one of them.
All right, Mike. Thank you very much. We'll let you go, and we'll just quickly talk about this. Well, first of all, the one thing before you even have this conversation is you got to deal with your medical staff about Carter's stress spot in his foot.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you've got to do.
Doesn't seem like it is an issue that's causing too much concern.
I need my medical people to reassure me.
100% agree. But I just wanted to put it out there. It does not, the reports that we have seen don't indicate that it is considered a serious injury or serious red flag, but 100% agree you got to make sure first.
Talking to Brian Boldinger, John and I talked to him, I guess it was on Friday morning, and at the Combine, and he said he had that very issue. And what happens is they're telling Carter, apparently, the medical people are saying, don't have the surgery, just let it heal on its own. Rest it, let it heal. Well, the problem is if it doesn't heal right, or if you have an aggravation, then you do have to have the surgery, and then they're going to put a screw in it. And now there's another whole healing process that has to take place after that. So you really, you enhance the impact of the injury if it winds up either not healing right or getting worse, and then you have to have the surgery. So it kind of builds on top of itself and becomes even a bigger issue, or potentially a bigger issue, I should say, potentially a bigger issue. So the medical staff of every team is going to have to determine what they think this is going to do to impact him, because remember now, he is very, very quick off the snap. His explosion to get into that pass rush, if his feet are not right, I mean, that's where it all starts for him.
Yeah. I mean, Mike asked about, strengths for these guys. I mean, has the potential to be an elite pass rusher in the NFL. Like,
and it's because of his get-off.
Yeah, there is a reason why he's being compared as a prospect to Micah Parsons. And it's not just because they both wore number 11 at Penn State. Like, they have a lot of similarities to their games. So if the medical side all checks out, and he is cleared from that sense, what you'd get in I almost said Micah Parsons, in Abdul Carter,
he's blue chip,
is a blue chip edge rusher, and then all of a sudden, you already have Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. Well, now your edge rushers are going to be in the most elite group in the NFL if you were to add Abdul Carter at number 3.
And then quickly for Hunter, you're getting a guy who's a pro's pro. Everybody loves his attitude, his work ethic. We had guys at Indianapolis tell us not only is he the number 1 corner in this draft, but he would probably be, I understand what you're going to say about McMillan, but we had guys on our show say he could easily be the number 1 receiver in this draft too. That's how good he is.
Yeah.
That's how talented he is. He is a ball hawk. He's an absolute ball hawk. He's got great anticipatory reactions, and he gets to the ball and has hands to make plays on the ball. So whether or not you want to put him outside, you want to put him in the slot, you want him to shadow somebody, you want him to play receiver, there's a lot of things you could do with him. And my feeling, like yours and John's, you make him a corner first, give him a small package of receiving plays, and you know what? If at some point you need to give him more receiving plays, then maybe you do it. And if he doesn't work out at corner, let's say for some reason, whatever, he just doesn't develop right, okay, put him at now you're a full-time receiver. That's fine. There's an awful lot. There's no downside to Travis Hunter from anybody that I talk to. There's truly no downside because he has done such a phenomenal job with his body and his conditioning that they believe he will hold up. Now, nobody that I talked to said he should play full-time both ways. I didn't hear anybody say that.
Other than him.
He
wants to, but he also, he said during his media session that he wants to play full-time at both. But he did acknowledge that no one has ever done it, and he did say, if a team doesn't want me to do that, I'm going to go with what the team says. It's not like he's going to demand whoever drafts him let him play full-time at both positions. But just as a corner, what you'd be getting is a, lockdown number 1 corner, ball hawk. Like, he's going to come in and be your number 1 corner.
That's it. Right away.
No doubt about it.
Right away.
And as a receiver, you're getting one of, if not the most explosive playmaker in this entire draft.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that all you need to do is get the ball in his hands, and could be gone. 70, screen pass to Travis Hunter, 70-yard touchdown. Pairing him with Malik Neighbors, in my opinion, would give the Giants at least one of the top young wide receiver duos in the entire NFL if he were to, lean more towards the wide receiver part.
As long as Carter's healthy and the medical staff checks out, I don't think you could go wrong with either guy.
Agreed. There's a reason why they are considered to be the two top prospects overall in this draft. Obviously,
and it's not even close.
Cam Ward could go before one of them or both of them, but that's just because of the quarterback position and how important it is.
That'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Show will be back tomorrow once again live, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time for 1 hour to talk Giants football. Also, remember, we have all kinds of stuff up on the website.
Yes, we have a Cynthia Freeland Giants huddle that is about to be posted.
Awesome. Cynthia does all
from the combine.
She does all kinds of scientific research on what makes these guys' skill sets.
She's big
work in the NFL.
Big on analytics.
Okay, but it's more scientific than it is interpretation.
Yes.
So it's a really good spot that John and I did with Cynthia Freeland. All kinds of other stuff that we did. Not only the Big Blue Kickoff Lives, but a bunch of huddles with all types of top-notch personnel that we did all week in Indianapolis. That stuff is going to be up there now for the next, ad infinitum. I think it's going to be in the archive as long as you guys want to take a look at it. So we invite you to do that on all your favorite podcast platforms. But that'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. For Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time.